You were created to create.
And now that you're here, the only way to unlock and unfold that is you find ways to continue to create.
When you stop learning, you stop growing. Your biggest purpose is how are you going to crack the code on you?
I have something I want to submit to you, all right? I want you to stop before we hop in, and I want you to really sit with something for me, okay? And it's this idea right here. So you have never, not for a single day in your life, stopped creating. Okay? Every day that you've been alive, you have been building something. A mood, like it could be a mood in a room, a pattern, or a part of the process in a relationship. Maybe it's a version of yourself. And I want you to realize too, you've either moved closer to who you're supposed to be, want to be, or further away. But you've never got to opt out of that. And none of us do. So the question was never whether you're creating. The question is the one that most of us never stop to ask. You know what that is? What have you been creating? What have you been creating? And was it on purpose? Okay. So today we are in step 8, which is C, the letter C in create, or for create, sorry. It's the C in allergic, but it stands for create. Okay, that is step 8 in the A16 Basics. It's me, Matt Lee. Welcome to another Tune In Tuesday. And man, I wanted to just hop in and really share on this topic of create. This is one of our core 4, okay? This is the second. We got love, create, grind, honor. And so this idea of create, what it is, I'm excited to just walk you through it as we are reaching the halfway point of our A16 Basics, chapter 8, step 8. Again, create. Let's talk about it, okay? Let's create some conversation right now. So here's where I want to start, because this really does change. I feel like everything I'm about to say, and I wanted to start with scripture. A lot of times I use that at the end of a chapter, or maybe it's a live talk like this. But I wanted to start us off in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, the very beginning of the Bible, right? And so the very first sentence in the entire Bible says this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? So I want to, of course, because we're talking about create, that first word, created, okay, or not first word, but that word created was the very first thing that we're ever told about God. The very first thing they start off the scriptures with is that we know and we're told that God creates. He creates. And then this is, that part that should really, I feel like, kind of put you at a pause, hit the brakes, right? A few verses later in the Bible, right? God says, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. So this is Genesis 1, I believe, verse 26. Okay. He says in his image, not just I'm not talking, this wasn't a physical appearance, right? This is talking about his nature, his capability, his creative essence. That's what we were made in the image of. So if the God who spoke this, entire galaxy into existence, this incredible place, right? With 3 words, let there be light. Wait, no, that's 4 words. Let there be light. Yeah, 4 words. Okay. And that God made you in his image. Then creativity isn't some talent that you might, have if you're lucky. No, it's actually coded in your DNA. It's a part of who you are. It's part of your design. You were created to create, right? So it's not something you're looking for. It's not something you hope you have. It's something you already are. And so when we look at what else he gave humanity, when we talk about God, in that same breath, of dominion, we also have authority. We have the ability to create and to speak over, or to command things, to shape things, right? Like the world around us. Genesis 2:15 talks about, it says that he placed the first human in the garden to work, to take care of it, right? We're talking about Adam and Eve and all. Every paradise wasn't handed over as a finished product to just sit in. It's raw material. It's an invitation to build, right? To create something. And so often I feel like we start to look at, oh, well, I can create, or if I was more creative, or if I was, a person that was good with the arts and the crafts, and like, no, that's not it. That's not it. You carry a creative nature and a design in you. Now, what that looks like, I don't know. What is your form of creativity? What are you good at when it comes to being creative? What are your forms? What are the dimensions? I don't know. That's for you to find out, right? But it's a part of who you are. It's a part of the way you've been designed. So the question is not, are you a creator? Okay. The question is, what are you creating? How are you creating? So much of this, and when I talk about the average versus the allergic to average, right? The default mind, like, I want you to realize, and this is my message to, the allergic to average individuals, you weren't meant to be a spectator of your own life. And that's what so many people become. You were made to be the creator, the commander of it. And so many people like sit on the sidelines of their own life, hoping and wishing that somebody else will create an opportunity, when that has been their job and their role, their responsibility this entire time, right? And that's exactly why, sitting still and avoiding, some of us, we get into hiding. People get into like wanting the world not to see them. It doesn't just feel like unproductive. It feels like a small death. When you're avoiding and you're hiding, you're not out creating, because in a very real like sense, it is one. It is kind of a small death. It's the refusal of, the exact thing that you were built for, which is to be a creator, to put your mind, your hand, your attention onto things and constantly create. But when you're not doing that intentionally, it feels like this like small death without us even realizing that. So here's the part, within step 8 that I think is important, right? I think it's super important for you to really like hear me out on, all right? So I really want you to hear this. You cannot stop creating. Hear me out. You cannot stop creating. You can only choose the direction. So I want you to just put that, deep within you and carry that with you. You can't stop creating. The only option we have is which direction are we going to be creating. So that means every single day, with every choice, every habit, every word you speak, you're creating something. And again, the question was never whether, your creative power is active, in your life, or is it not, or there are days, no, it's always active. Your creative power is always active. The only question is, which way are you directing it? And so, and this goes so much into universal laws and things that, are in motion and things that are at work that we can't see. It's like the law of gravity, right? You can't see it, but it's in motion. We see it in motion whenever we test it. So here's a law when it comes to, creative power used with intention. It builds order. Creative power, it literally lets the unmanaged always, something, let me say it like this, something that is unmanaged always births some form of chaos, okay? So when we get out of this, like, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, when we utilize our creative power, it builds order. And when we don't utilize and create structure and create, a system and create, disciplines and again, habits, basics that we do in our day, in our life, it's always going to birth some form of chaos. And so again, this isn't like, I want you to remember, this isn't just like scriptural language or me trying to motivate you. Again, this is literal like physics. There's a law of, well, it's the law called the second law of thermodynamics. Did I say that right? Okay, thermodynamics. I struggle with big words, so. But that law, the second law of thermodynamics, it says any system left without deliberate energy applied to its move towards some other direction will move it to disorder. So all that fancy language is saying a room doesn't organize itself. And when it doesn't get organized, it's going to move into disorder. That's just a natural byproduct of what's going to happen. A garden, trust me, I know this very well. I don't have to plant my weeds. I don't have to seed the weeds. I don't have to water them, but they're always there. And so like even a garden that doesn't, weed itself, it's going to become chaos. It's going to become ugly, right? So you're not an exception from that law. Neither is your life. Think about it. So a person who is, isn't intentionally, they're just not creating a discipline, maybe it's a disciplined mind, a disciplined body, a discipline within their relationships, whatever, it can go on and on from there. By default, is creating some type of breakdown from chaos that they're going to eventually find down the road without even seeing it. And so this plays out into every avenue of our life. Like we can see it more and more. If you're not intentional about how you are creating and what you're doing, eventually it will lead to chaos. You will create some type of path and some type of system that puts you on a path of chaos or struggle. Okay. So, let me see. I want to move on to, what was it? I think so much of like, okay, I want to start like when we look at what are the most important things to focus on and create. And so much of that is literally what the A16 Basics is helping you to do right now. It's to help you to create a new way of thinking, a new way of perceiving, a new way of seeing the world. And a lot of this comes through your beliefs, right? Creating new belief systems about what is actually possible, what is actually true. A lot of these things that we've covered up in the last 7 chapters, the last 7 steps, is meant to help you create a new lens to see out of for yourself and the world around you, for what's possible, right? So the first point of creation and what we should really work the most on is creating a new way of thinking, right? Your mental attitudes, the thoughts that you cultivate and that you carry, the ones that dominate your mind most of the day, is actually where you're being pulled towards, where you're moving towards in life, in your day. So creating a mindset, a new way of thinking, something that you begin to almost grow a dedication in the growth of your mindset, the thoughts, right? The responses. Sometimes whenever you're faced with stress, you're faced with pressure, where do you go? And how do you train yourself? How do you create a way that allows you not to travel down the same road mentally that leads to chaos, right? So there's been studies within, science, but it's called neuroplasticity, right? The brain's lifelong ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. So like 10 years ago or so, I got into all this. This was like really part of my first path of my journey, being a product of being allergic to the average. So I was learning about, neuroplasticity and what that is. And, your brain can form like literal new pathways. And so if you don't know this, I'm going to just throw this in real quick, but your brain, when it starts to track with a idea or a habit of thought, maybe it's every time you see the, neighbor parked in front of your driveway or a little bit close, oh, it's going to be a bad day. And so, then all of a sudden you're mad, and then all of a sudden it just spirals into, chaos. But your ability to see, oh, well, he parked, let me just perceive it different if I can and see that, it doesn't have to be a bad day. It doesn't have to be horrible. Maybe I can see if they move it, or maybe I can squeeze out. And then over time, the more you do that, that thought process of going straight to the negative, it goes from that highway that you're always traveling mentally to, oh, it's going to suck, or today's going to suck, the situations, the day in general, and it moves you to what first looks like you're traveling down a sidewalk, which gets you to say, oh no, actually it's not going to be horrible. It'll be fine. This is just whatever. Eventually you keep pushing yourself to get off the highway, get on the sidewalk. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. But over time, like we talked about last week, the compounding effect, the more that you start to build and do that, your sidewalk then turns into a big old trail with asphalt. And then over time, it becomes a 1-lane road. And then over time, that thought process you're building new pathways so it gets thicker and it gets more consistent to where now you're traveling down a freeway. Anytime something like that happens, your thought process doesn't go to the negative. You've now trained yourself and your brain has reorganized itself to say, oh, that's not true. Here's what we do now. It's fine. It's okay. Okay. So this is crazy. And it doesn't matter. Your brain has the ability to do this at any age, any season of your life. Okay. So every single time that you're creating something, your brain forms new pathways that are strengthening the connections between those neurons. Okay. So that's not a metaphor. It's not something that just sounds cool to talk. This is actually measurable. So you are not just producing, an output. You're becoming a more capable version of yourself. Neurologically, this all acts, as a creation at one act is a creation at that time. You're forming, you're doing something. So your brain is, this is why I talk about the brilliance of us, the brilliance of humans. You watching this, you're freaking brilliant. The brain is a creative powerhouse. Right. And so every time you choose to create instead of consume, it lets you play. It almost mentally and in your life, it lets you play like a symphony around you. When you get out of what the average does, which is consume, which is easy to do. And instead of being a consumer, you become a creator. There's something magic. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a design that you have been instilled with, that you were born with to create. And it's when you start to do more of it, there's this other side. On the other side of that, there's this joy. There's this fulfillment. There's this, just almost excitement sometimes. So we have to stay in that position of being a creator. We're not consumers. Unless we allow ourselves to stay and just consume, right? So every act of creation, when we talk about a business, it could be your habits, it could be a relationship, a redesigned, better life, moves towards this stage that these it's really 3 stages, okay? And let me give them to you fast. But these things help us to move into these 3 stages, and I'm going to end you on this. Right here, okay? So these 3 stages, they call them movements. So I'm gonna give you 3 movements, and again, they're stages. But the first movement or the first stage is, imagination. Imagination. Shout out to SpongeBob. In that, sorry, I had to pause there because my imagination went to the SpongeBob episode. But movement 1, step 1, talking about imagination before anything else in the real world that we see, before it ever exists, it exists somewhere before that. And that was in the mind, right? In your mind. And that's true for your life. Before things existed, maybe you didn't physically build it. You didn't make that couch. You didn't build that fridge. But at some point, it was an idea. We need a couch. We need a new fridge or a bigger one, right? So it starts in your mind. I like talking about, of course, Albert Einstein. But he says imagination is more important than knowledge. I love that. Imagination is more important than knowledge. And he says, because imagination is limited, right? But I'm sorry. Back up. Knowledge is limited. That's what I meant to say. Imagination is more important than knowledge because knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world, right? It can embody and capitalize like the entire world through, we can only do that through our imagination. So Hebrews 11:1, give you some scripture on this, says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So what do you see right now? In like the workshops or the spaces of your imagination that doesn't exist anywhere else yet, that is actually nothing yet. What's that imagination? What does that look like? What is that? What are those ideas? What is that raw material? It's not created yet. It's not here, but you've thought about that. It's nothing. It's just an idea, right? But that's where it starts. We have to partner with our imagination. We have to utilize that. We have to allow, even times, I think the divine, so much of the relationship and hearing the divine comes through allowing your imagination to run wild with something higher, with something greater, and take what comes to you. A lot of times we try to, oh, that's stupid. Play with your imagination. Walk with your imagination. Close your eyes, right? Have some quiet time. So that's step one, or stage one, should I say, in the first movement, which is the imagination. Okay, movement two, step two, it goes into then from the imagination, this starts to form ideas. This is where you start taking that raw idea and you start shaping it. Start kind of, well, what would that look like if I realistically did that, right? You start writing it down, you start testing it, maybe you start to refine it a little bit until it takes actual form, right? Whatever that looks like. Okay, I can here's what it'll do, or I can order it from here, or I can build it by doing this, right? So most people in that part of the process, movement two, step two, when you get to the ideas and it starts to come into like shaping and forming, and that's where you run into all the problems, all the bullshit, all the reasons why did I even try? Why did I start this? Why did I think, right? That's where most people stop, or they skip it. They're like, nah, that would take too much. They don't even start. And so they jump like straight from a feeling, into action without a plan. Or they get stuck forever in imagination because, refining an idea, it actually takes a lot of discipline. Trust me, I know. I've had a lot of ideas. I've had a lot of, been across a lot of businesses and positions. And so to refine and deal and solve and sleep on, it takes a lot. So a lot of people just stop. But if you don't, it goes to the movement three, stage three, which is you create it. Finally, you get to start creating it. But this doesn't mean this is the fun part either. But this is where, the unseen finally becomes seen. And if I'll be honest with you, this is really, I don't know. This is just like the most vulnerable movement because now I can be judged for this stage, this part of the movement three. Now people can start seeing what I'm bringing to life and what I've been trying, or they didn't know, but now then, this is the most vulnerable part. It can fall short, you can fail. And this is exactly why, so many good ideas never leave stage two, movement two. They don't leave from there. Fear is fear of the like imperfect creation, or it's not going to be right, keeps people trapped in, permanent planning. So they're like, and I've been there before. You want it to be so perfect that you keep planning, and you never actually create. Okay, but hear me. An imperfect creation, though, think about this, that exists in the world is always going to outperform a perfect idea that never left your mind. An imperfect creation that is actually in our world is so much better, 1,000% better than a perfect idea that never left your mind. So Ecclesiastes, I want to bring you into this, chapter 9, verse 10. It says, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. So not some days, not once it's flawless. Like now, we do it now, right? We move into it now. We capitalize on it now. I mean, whoever you are watching this, maybe you really needed to hear that there's something that maybe you've wanted to create or you've thought about it. It could be anything. Maybe it's just creating a new expression of something for you. Maybe it's a new hobby for you. Maybe it's creating a new turn in a relationship. You need to call somebody, talk through, like whatever it is. You don't need permission. You just need to start. And if you needed permission, this is your permission. You got it. Start. Go for it. But whatever it is, you need to continue to work and create to continue to see, what is actually possible, what's on the other side of that. And so I want to end with this final note, because on the topic of create, man, this has been a complete life changer for me, from, the identity I carry to the things I've created, to the things I've been a part of creating, to the adventures, but so much of the goodness, the richness, the joy in my life has come through more and more realizing that I am a creator. I am a commander. And there's a lot of things that, even though I can't create that, or I have this idea, there's things every single day that I can be creating that are changing not only my life, but for the better, others' lives. And that's the truth for you today watching this. What is it that you want to, need to, should have been creating, right? And how can you start creating today? Leave no room for excuses to be left on the table. Strip away, because you're already creating. How can you be more intentional? How can you be more allergic to the average in the things and the ways that you're creating? So again, I'm going to end it there. It's me, Matt Lee. Hey, pick up the power to create. Sit in your position as a creator. Stay allergic. I'll see you next week. I love you guys. It's me, Matt Lee. I'm out.